So, let's go ahead and get started. There's still some people milling about in our beautiful living room, but hopefully they'll make their way. I already introduced our wonderful speakers, and they're going to introduce themselves and provide some insight into some of the great things that they're doing that's having positive impacts in New Mexico. I do want to mention really quickly that we are recording the session, and it will be posted on our UNM Facebook page later if you want to take a look. There are microphones up here, so we should be able to hear and for the session as well. But if you do have questions, please make sure you speak up so we can all hear. And so I think we're fine just talking, but if anybody feels like they need a microphone, we can have some. But if not, then we'll just go ahead and kick off with our impact investing panel. Drew has kindly offered to sort of facilitate and run this session. So please go ahead.
Thanks everyone. Thanks to UNM and thanks to particularly our group of professors who've done an excellent job of bringing visibility. Before we started, I wanted to start with our Longview crew and San Diego Community Foundation. I want to find out who's here, and it shows, you had a choice between two sessions. So give me just a little bit, tell me if you are a business owner or work in the private sector, would characterize yourself that way? Okay, great, thanks. And how many of us are students? You can wear more than one identity, that's okay. And how many of us are in government? Okay, and how about either philanthropy or investment or something like that? Okay, great, so we've got a wide mix. And can any brave soul just share kind of something you might want to learn for our next hour together, or something that would be really valuable for you? Someone just take a risk. Yes, please.
Hi, Bruce Bradford, Bank of Albuquerque. So, this is an interesting evolution of the economy, and I'd love to see us as an institution, part of BOK Financial out of Tulsa, be somewhat at the forefront of it. I moved here 2.5 years ago from Dallas, and it was becoming a thing there. And definitely am excited to see the engagement and interest in it here.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Bruce. And Bank of Albuquerque does some great things at the community level, so certainly from a CR perspective, but talking to another financial institution and learning how it is possible. So thank you for that. Anyone else give a perspective of something you'd like to gain in the next hour here? Yeah, please.
I think it's just the idea that we're learning, and as a student, your impact and how it impacts thinking as far as learning and knowledge and looking into the future.
So being able to get new information that can help you into the future. Okay, great, thank you. How about one more? Someone, brave soul? Yes, please.
Government perspective. I'm Natalie Figueroa, representative in the New Mexico House. So I'm looking at this for ways to legislatively support this kind of work because it's good for New Mexico.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. Thanks for taking your time to be here. Okay, great. So we're going to do little intros. We're each going to have each folk introduce themselves. And I really encourage them to tell their own personal stories. So those of us who are students know that you can actually get a job in this field. And you can tell your mom, dad, and grandparents that it's actually a good thing to be doing. And then share that. So I'll go last. But I did want to see, since Glenn's here with his mouth full, Mayor was really kind to give me a shout out this morning. It was really Glenn who deserved the shout out. When it was Senator Keller a few years ago, it was Glenn who was leading our charge with the Green Chamber to get the effort to try to do the legislative work, and he's done a lot of tireless work with the Green Chamber and himself personally, so I want to acknowledge you in public, Glenn, because he was about. So, Judy, would you like to go first?
Yeah.
Kind of give yourself an organization down the line.
Hi, I'm Judy Brand. I'm Vice President for Community Investment and Strategy. That's a mouthful at the Santa Fe Community Foundation. Drew says a personal story. I'll try without sharing too much and be embarrassed later. I feel good being here because often I'm in kind of room full of social philanthropists or the nonprofit sector or with the business sector, and these are a group of people who are wanting it all, right? You want to put your jobs or investment career in a place where you feel passionate and you can put your values to the work, and that's where I come. My dad was a pastor. He did a lot of mission and kind of religious work, but at the heart it was a lot of social work. Growing up with it, I thought, and yeah, I used to joke because my former CEO actually went on to become a monk.
Wow.
And so I used to joke, I grew up with a pastor and now I work for a monk, so I became a monk. But I actually thought when I was younger I would go to seminary and do social work. But I reluctantly went to school, studied business and economic policy and also MBA, the whole time thinking at the end of the day I'm gonna do social work. I also became an accidental management consultant, did that for 6 years, and did a lot of corporate finance, and actually waited 6 years to do nonprofit practice as a fellow, which was quite amazing, and left that career to run a small nonprofit startup in San Francisco. And when I moved out here, I got to consult with the foundation, combining kind of two loves I had, and found work at the Santa Fe Community Foundation. One of the consulting work I did for them and ended up managing afterward as part of my work was impact investing. That was about 6-7 years, relatively still new in foundation sector and somewhat new in New Mexico as well. I was so excited that Santa Fe Community Foundation was exploring it that I think I almost did pro bono, but did get paid, which is important, right? And now it's a pretty strong part of our core work. So Santa Fe Community Foundation, we've been doing impact investing for about 6 to 7 years now. Our board committed up to 10% of the asset that we manage. Some of our assets are managed by donors chosen investors. So that came up to be now about $4.5 million. It's small, but still significant for New Mexico Foundation. We've had 14 investments so far in, we kind of put them in 3 different categories. Nonprofits actually need low cost capital, so we've done that. Community development, financial institutions, and we've actually invested in, I think, 5 what we call innovative social enterprises that have solutions for social problems that could be scaled. Mialo was, we put tiny little investment thinking we'll most likely lose it, but we really loved the work, what it was doing to the artists and economy, just didn't want to get kind of left out of that movement. And we wish we did more because we got paid, I think, in 6 months with a 12% note, which ended up being 24% effective rate. That's a good return, right? We wish like we put 10x of it. We are an investor in a hotel in Las Vegas, New Mexico, in a rural economy as an equity owner that leveraged new market tax credit. So that kind of interesting both economic development but core to our mission. So that's been quite enlightening for us, and we are starting to work with our donors to sum up their investment into specific investment opportunities. We just kicked that initiative off. But what can you do with $4.5 million, right? It's tiny. So we've always seen our role as kind of a catalytic, kind of proving the model in our sector in New Mexico. And one of the things that we worked on with many of the partners is the New Mexico Impact Investing Collaborative, which is to bring kind of dozen other foundations and some individual investors to kind of collaborate around both building the capacity for impact investing in the state so that we have a credible partner in state to bring in larger investment resources to the state, but also kind of learn by doing, right? So we are co-investing together, doing due diligence together, and see what it could be done. We finished our pilot phase that led to about 9 investments together, both kind of supported directly and facilitated. We are doing another round of, a lot of learning here, so we're doing another second round of investment. We had a joint request for applications. We have 10 investments potential right now that we are reviewing together. And some actually public market strategy with a New Mexico overlay that we want to talk about. And a lot of thinking around how we grow this and make it permanent as a structure that supports the state. That was probably more than 5 minutes, I'll stop there.
My turn?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'll try to make it short. So my name is Doug Lynham, and I grew up in a wealthy family, actually, and when my parents divorced, money became a weapon of mass destruction. It was what they used to manipulate and control each other. So I grew up thinking that money was the root of all evil, and first ran away, became a long-haired hippie, and thought that was going to be the solution to things, but it turns out that most hippies just want different stuff. They really aren't that selfless. So I tracked to I went to the Marine Corps and went to officer camps with the Marines And that was great, loved it. Found that blowing things up is fun, but blowing up people isn't. So then I shifted again, and I went and became a Benedictine monk. And I was a monk for 20 years in a monastery up in Santa Fe. And it was a great venture, but about a couple of years in, the monastery went bankrupt. So I had to find out a way to deal with money. I kind of fell on my shoulders to pull the monastery through bankruptcy, figure out a healthier attitude towards money. And then I was also concurrently teaching at a private school, started teaching econ and finance, and I did that for a long time until I discovered that teacher retirement plans across the country are a shambles, and they're actually quite abusive, and it's a long story there. But so then I started shifting and began building my own financial services firm to build better retirement plans for schools and teachers and colleges. And then went out on my own a few years ago, and fortunately found a home at Longview Asset Management. I was kind of a stray puppy who was drowning in the gutter trying to figure out the whole world of finance and business. And David here took me under his wing, and now we do individual wealth management, endowments, institutional investing, and the whole gambit. So I left the monastery in 2017, and here I am. And then if you want to know the whole story, I'll plug my book just once. It's called From Monk to Money Manager, a former monk's financial guide to being a little bit wealthy and why that's okay. So here I am, and we're on to be in the panel. And so we build, our firm, of course, is a B Corp, and we don't take new clients unless they are committed to environmentally and socially responsible investing. And I built the first institutional retirement plan ever that we know of that is all ESG. So that's kind of a big deal. It was a lot of legal and regulatory challenges around that, and a lot of other good things as well. So that's my quick pitch.
So I'm David Cantor, and I'm Doug's colleague and friend. I founded Longview Asset Management in 2002 in Santa Fe, and for the first, and before Longview, I had a predecessor company that started in 2000, so we're going on close to 20 years in this business now. And for the first, 5 or 10 years, I took the conventional Wall Street approach, which is as an investment advisor, you're non-aligned, and you make as much money for your clients as you can, and then you leave it to them to do good things with that money. And over time, my feelings about that began to change as I thought more about the role of money in driving policy and the power of corporations in potentially changing systems. And I also have a 26 and a 23-year-old daughter, 2 daughters, and they are both, like many people in their generation, very, very deeply disturbed by the world that they are moving into. And we would talk about it a lot, and I realized I couldn't look my kids in the eye and just say, I'm agnostic, I'm not aligned, I'm making money for people and they can do what they want with it. I just felt like I have to be part of the solution, and within the small sphere that I operate, try and be doing something which is helpful, and that I can say to them, I didn't just stand by while your planet went up in flames. So we began doing socially responsible investing, and it was initially just a part of our toolkit and something that we offered to clients who were interested. And it evolved over the years, and as Doug said, it's at this point, it's what we do, and we won't take clients on who are not interested in investing sustainably. And a couple of years ago, and Drew was one of the people who introduced me to the idea of B corporations, and I thought this would be a way for us to walk our talk and to really show our clients that we were not just paying lip service to some notion of social responsibility and community engagement, but that we were actually doing it and living it ourselves. And so my older daughter interned with us for a year in 2018. And she actually took charge of the B Corp certification process and saw us through over the course of that year, and we finally got certified in May of this year. And we are now the first financial services B Corporation in New Mexico. And I'm very happy to be here and sharing this with all of you.
And I'm Drew Tolchin. My firm is called Upspring Associates. It used to be called Social Enterprise Associates. We've been recognized, I think, 6 times now for what they call one of the best in the world small businesses. And when I first was in New Mexico, we were the first B Corp in New Mexico. They have this nice little map on the website at bcorporation.net, where you can also check out assessments. So it's a great tool, even if you're just a student or if you're a business or if you'd like to learn about other businesses. And New Mexico sadly was empty at that time, so we were proud to have a little blue one, which is great. They do their little graphics. And Upspring is a network, so we are a virtual company working with different people with different expertise, and we'll align a team of experts to help a company or a nonprofit or government effort to bridge. So the things that I feel really strongly about is being able to help translate a really good entrepreneurial idea or social entrepreneurial idea into communicable manner that everyone can embrace. I often say, everything you just said is great, but explain it like you have to explain it to your grandmother and have her actually sincerely be excited about it. And we need that level of communicability, because some of our great social entrepreneurs get super excited, and you can spend a whole lunch with them and still not understand what they're actually trying to achieve. So I think that that's very valuable, and being in Santa Fe as a local, I got to know the Meow Wolf crew over a number of years, and they were very successful at that, right? They're able to take an artistic vision and a visual and really wow you with that. And so you can see the power of a good idea that's also good for the world as a B Corp. And Vince and the 6 co-founders really took this stuff to heart as they learned going from being artists to how to be business people. And so the idea of bridging and communicating universally is something that I've grown into with some of my professional activities, and had a chance to work internationally with the Grameen Foundation doing microfinance loans in Afghanistan, India, and other places. And then also to be able to come back to New Mexico and work with Native communities who are trying to figure out housing and some of the historical pain that is sadly still with a lot of those communities. And then also being able to help both communities, counties, and cities here to do better, and have each of us be able to step forward a little bit. And so that's a big motivation for me. And one of the things we've learned in B Corpness is that you can evolve over time, right? So you got to start somewhere, and being worried about taking your first step isn't going to get you anywhere. So try, and whether that looks in social responsibility, like doing the little things that you can, and the most immediate things you can. Maybe you just start recycling in your office, or maybe you start, if you're a student, reusing something that you couldn't otherwise. And then as you get more experienced, it becomes easier to do these things. And that's been true for Upspring in the B Corp recertification, and that's how we've been able to increase our scores every year, because we're able to do things like learn. One of our colleagues in the last session explained about how you get a point for allowing staff to actually pay volunteer time. And so again, if it's something that you want to do anyway, either for your own personal efforts or in your business, why not incorporate it and start making it a policy and then bake it into your corporate activities and things like that. So you have to have a progression. And so this idea, particularly in New Mexico, of trying to bridge different communities and having people who speak past each other often, or maybe even in the same community but not really spending time together, getting those conversations to happen and get that collaboration, that activity to work, whether that's actually documenting what you're doing for a business plan or a pitch deck or through media or using social media now, or whether being able to take complicated ideas and figuring out the more basic human communication of things. So for that, I think I'll stop there on the intro side. And again, this is your time, so we want to give you the chance. We all agreed to some questions that we would answer. we wanted to see and we're each gonna give you the chance to keep asking questions. So does anyone have a brave soul wanna stick their neck out a little bit and ask a question, otherwise I'll go, yeah.
This is actually for a project that we're working on in her class.
Great.
We're working with Meals on Wheels and we're trying to increase their volunteerism, and one of the things they want is to have corporate people come in and volunteer for them. How do you maybe pitch to the corporate side, well, this would benefit your company even if you pay them to come and help Meals on Wheels? So in this case, Meals on Wheels wouldn't even pay for the volunteering, but they would be getting the benefit of it.
Excellent question. Does anyone have a quick answer, and if it's not specifically Meals on Wheels, just in general, in New Mexico, how we try to get corporate and other people to participate in social good?
Well, we offer our employees paid time off a day a month to volunteer. And we actually don't talk about it very much, and we all just do our, we're all involved in something, on a board or in a nonprofit organization, one description or another. And it actually takes up a fair amount of our time. In terms of encouraging corporations to sponsor their employees to volunteer, I would emphasize that it would be good for their business, the public view that their employees were working for Meals on Wheels, for example. I think that's a pretty simple sales pitch.
Trying to pull out in the back of my head a name for you, but there's a wonderful gentleman who I'll look up my phone and pull it out in a minute after this is over. But he's doing a wonderful project where he's feeding about several millions of people around the country, where he's partnering with churches and nonprofits and businesses, and he's got a great corporate model for that. I just saw him present at a conference, and I'll connect you with him. But it's a great model for exactly what you're doing. And the key emphasis is this is when you're talking to businesses, what's in it for them? Like, how is this going to positively impact their bottom line? And if you can show that you can, then you're much more likely to get partnership and sponsorship. And that's really the question: is how can this community service not only benefit the community, but at the same time also benefit the companies that are participating and involved? And there's some, and I'll connect you with those resources. Thank you.
Well, I'll just, yeah, I totally agree, and I think the vision is that it's not just a sales pitch, that you want more companies to buy into the idea that they are accountable for a larger community good. And so maybe you create a kind of a peer pressure that, one company does it, not just markets it, but, storytell, then embracing this as part of their corporate work, and other companies to buy into that.
Thank you.
And just one quick sidebar on that. One of the big complaints so there's a big conference in Croatia of all places I was just at, and one of the big problems that corporations were, these are all CEOs around the world, and the big problem they found is having reliable, credible partnerships that they could team up with for the long haul, and that they could build these long relationships. They would often reach out to nonprofits and try to engage with them, but they would have, they couldn't scale, they couldn't follow through, and it just wasn't really worth their time, and essentially wasting company time and money and resources, even though they're trying to do good. And so being able to have that solid partnership that they can count on, that you're going to deliver, follow through, and things are well run, well organized, is a real challenge. So understanding their business model and how it ties in with your nonprofit model, and making sure that those are seamless connections.
Excellent. We had a couple hands, so thank you.
I was just gonna add to that, I think always the pitch, including their branding. I think Kim's slide from Boulder was a perfect example of everybody wearing the red shirts with the B on the back volunteering is exactly what the CEO and CFO wants to see. If I'm gonna give you time off, I wanna see my branded staff out there doing good that I can share with my community for their goodwill, right? I think that's always helpful.
And Edie, can I put you on the spot to give you 20 seconds of self-promotion?
20 seconds.
Thank you. Yes, what would you like me to speak to?
It's your choice, you get your own self-promotion for the many great things that you're involved with.
Thank you. Yes, I'm a part of a public benefit corp, unfortunately registered in Delaware, and we are offering a brand new housing building solution that is fast, smart, beautiful, passive house, affordable homes. Sorry.
And you've got some magazine to show, right?
right? And apparently we just got press. So it's out of the box and into the magazine. Now we got some really nice.
Which magazine?
What?
Which magazine?
It's in trend.
Excellent.
Fall, winter. So talking about the architecture, we're partnered with an architecture firm in Santa Fe, need-based, and we're rolling out from custom homes, a repeatable program that anyone can build with, anywhere, up to 3 stories high, and the highest performance. So we talk about certification of B certification as well as the highest possible green standard. So people ask us, oh, is it LEED certified? And we say, no, it's actually the European standard. So we're leapfrogging over into 2030 today. So thank you, Drew. That's the pitch.
Excellent. Other hands? Yeah, here and then back there.
I actually have a question not for you, but for you.
Why don't you do it at the end, so.
Yeah. End of session?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, make sure you find each other. Excellent, thank you. Excellent. Other hands that were up. Okay, I'll go to the questions, the prearranged, prepaid questions. And so one of the things is, what can each of us do in this room around investment for triple bottom line purposes? And since each of us kind of sits in a different place, we were hoping that people could kind of talk about both private markets, the public markets, philanthropy, and the government. So who wants to go first? Okay, great.
So, our firm focuses on, public investments. I think there are 2 ways that we've approached this. One of them is working with individual investors, individual clients who want to invest the same, and building portfolios for them that allow them to invest in alignment with their values. The other side of it is the institutional side, where we've been working with schools through Doug and building ESG or socially responsible retirement funds for school employees and college employees. And I think these are 2 ways of bringing pressure to bear from slightly different angles. The investments themselves are all in the public market. They're publicly traded mutual funds, equities, and bonds. But I think the goal is to build momentum and reach a tipping point where enough investors, whether they're employees whose retirement savings are in school plans, or individuals who have their own portfolio, are pushing companies towards more accountability, more transparency, and more positive action in terms of changing some of these really difficult problems that we're dealing with environmentally and socially.
Thank you. Anything you want to do?
Well, I mean, look at.
Well, I think in parallel with BCorp, what's happening here is like we're kind of challenging and questioning the status quo of what business is, what investment is, and what philanthropy is. If you define philanthropy as you have a big endowment, you make money off of it and give it out grants, then you're stuck. If you say philanthropy is supporting positive change, you are sitting on a lot of assets and you can do a lot more than just grant out money. So one of the ways we are challenging it is our foundation is doing it a little bit, but not as much around SRI ESG. We could be doing more. I think Glenn knows very well, a lot of foundations are embracing their role as an institutional investor and getting into shareholder activism and a lot of different ways that you can drive change in a way, in some ways, a lot more meaningful. It's not going to replace philanthropy, but you can do a lot more. What we are doing, because we are a community foundation and we give a lot of grants and support donors to support the community, but we do have assets, so using some of that asset to invest with financial return, but also supporting social impact with that asset, that's kind of challenging our model and seeing more impact there. I also think it's survival, right? I think what's happening in business sector, it does threaten what philanthropy could look like, because 2 generations after, there's probably not gonna be a lot of people who wants to, make money, put it into investment and give out money, right? So part of us innovating in our model to drive more change with all the assets that we have is how we are thinking about it. I think everyone, if you're a consumer, you can drive change by demanding more to businesses. If you run any business, whether it's volunteering or making it part of more implicit model by turning into a BCorp, there's a lot that we can do pretty much in any role we play, I think, in this side.
And then I'd add a couple points. So if we're thinking about investing and things that will help the triple bottom line, those of us who are in business here, think about where you're actually spending your money, right, and where you're putting your money. So what is my banking institution? New Mexico is lucky that we do have quite a number of credit unions and local banks. So there are really solid alternatives to kind of the national banks that have had less experience or less exposure to doing things that are good for the world. So that's one. What am I actually doing with my money? And then where am I spending my money? So am I, when I need an office supply, am I just ordering something from Amazon or going to Office Depot? Or is there another local alternative that may be more virtuous to our local economy? Maybe it's a little more expensive, maybe it takes a little more time, but could I work with them over time and build a solid relationship? So what am I doing with my cash? The second is when people are spending money on me, even if it's a contract, can I safeguard that money? Can I make sure that I'm doing a good job? And that, again, as was mentioned about, I want to know my brand's protected. So then being able to promote, can I give people the touchback or the feedback to let them know that money's being well spent and give them a means to promote and feel good about that expenditure? And then this third thing, which I think is something all of us can do, is even if you have a small portfolio, either investing or a retirement, find out what is in your portfolio and making sure you know that you're invested in something that you care about as well. There's plenty of evidence now that you can earn even better returns than the average market with investing in things that we care about. If you want to write a check yourself, if you're an angel, there is angel activity here in New Mexico. If you're not an accredited investor or wealthy and you're more starting out, if you're a student or you have more modest means, there's still some specific things that you can do. We have what's called CDFIs in the state, which is a non-bank lender. HomeWise, the Loan Fund, Axion, which is now DreamSpring. Each of these allows people in the community to invest in them and offers a return. So I can lend money to a HomeWise to help low-income people buy housing, and they will pay me an investment return for that investment. There's a wonderful entity up in Boulder, Colorado called Namaste Solar, and they've been so successful, they started their own fund called Kachua Fund. And they are really amazing. I personally have invested as disclosure, because I believe in what they're doing. And they figured out how to borrow money from others so that they can do more solar investments and other kind of triple bottom line things, help nonprofits buy buildings, for example. And you don't have to be accredited. You can do this with a more modest investment. And then there's crowdfunding, right? So going online. Caveat emptor, be careful, do your research. You may not make your money. I've made and lost money with online investments, not from any princes of Nigeria or anything. But there are a number of websites and portals that are doing this, both donations or philanthropic or karma, and also investing. And so it's another way for each of us around this room where you can actually do something that can help both New Mexico and help yourselves. Great, so before we turn to the panels, canned questions. Any more questions from them? Yeah, Glenn, please.
But you touched on something with the returns.
Yeah.
And I think that SRI and ESG investment have always been viewed, or up until recently, as I'm gonna take a less return on my investment so that I can do good. But maybe you can touch on some of the funds and how they are performing in comparison. The SII numbers have gone from, we started with BCorp from like $3 trillion to over $10 trillion in investment.
Yeah.
And especially when you're doing public investing, kind of.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'm gonna ask our public folks to go first, and then also let's be mindful of some of our letters and jargon, our acronyms, and make sure we're defining terms when we're using them, okay?
SRI, socially responsible investment, ESG, environmental, social, and governance, which are the criteria used for socially responsible investing. Also sustainable investing, ethical investing, responsible investing, they're all the same thing. you're right that for a long time there was the perception that if you were going to align your investments with your values or invest responsibly, you had to be willing to sacrifice return. And what we've seen over the last couple of decades is that that is empirically untrue. And the simplest illustration of that is if you look at the socially responsible version of major stock market indices like the S&P 500 or the MSCI Global All Country World Index. The socially responsible versions of those classic indices have actually outperformed over the past 15 years. And I'm constantly cautioning Doug not to take this out and tout it as something that investors can count on. 15 years is a relatively short period of time. And I think one of the things that has influenced that or contributed to that outperformance has been the fact that the ESG or SRI versions of these indices are lighter on carbon and fossil fuels. And this has been a period when the price of oil has come down a lot, the price of coal has come down. That could change, and there may be periods in the future when ESG investing is somewhat less profitable than conventional investing. But certainly for the past 15 years, ESG investors have done very nicely. And especially now, there are more and more mutual funds, open-ended, easily available mutual funds that anybody can invest in with any amount of money that are very, very low cost. And so you can not only invest in companies that you expect to do well, but you can invest in vehicles that will give you exposure to those returns at a very reasonable price. So, yeah, does that answer your question?
And I have to wear my watch.
Please,
Impact investing, and just caveat that absolutely you can do SRI, ESG or impact investing and make better return many times. And I think that's the bar now, especially in a down market. This kind of investment can actually be your safer strategy that can beat the market often. But we don't want that, as more investors from mainstream traditional investors jump into it and embrace impact investing and philanthropy, we don't want to lose that deep community impact value of impact investing. So we define it as either finance first or market related investment where you have a financial bar but you want the impact as well. Versus impact first where your primary goal is impact, but you want a financial return as well. I think that looking at the whole continuum and figuring out what kind of investor are you willing to risk or get lower return because you care so much about the impact? Or are you finance first and want the impact as well? Or you really want both and want to find that rare opportunities where you're getting both? I think distinguishing that and not lumping the whole impact investing category as one thing, have to be careful about that.
And what you were just saying, Judy, brings up another subject which I think is interesting, which is fiduciary responsibility. And if you are in the role of a financial advisor, if you're a registered investment advisor, as we are, you are expected to fulfill fiduciary responsibility, which is to put your clients' interests first. And that's defined as looking very carefully at the cost of the investments, the performance of the investments. And in the past, one might have argued that to invest in ESG or socially responsible funds that might have produced lower returns was not fulfilling your fiduciary responsibility as an advisor. That's no longer an issue because the funds that are available are less expensive, their performance has been very good. We have added for ourselves another criteria for fiduciary responsibility. And one of the criteria that's a conventional one for fiduciaries is that you're acting in the interests of your client and their beneficiaries. Well, we think of our clients' beneficiaries as their children and their children's children and their great-grandchildren. So that really opens the door to a whole new definition of fiduciary responsibility. And we call it ESG fiduciaries. And we've actually started a little 501c3, it's in its infancy, but it's called the ESG Fiduciary Institute. And our goal is to work with other financial professionals to get this definition of fiduciary responsibility to be more widely accepted. And ultimately, it has to be accepted by the government and the Department of Labor in order for us to be able to use it for public pension funds and schools and so on. But it's a big issue.
And a couple other specifics, to give people specific names. One opportunity is to find Longview and the Longviews of the world, so small private advisors who have a little bit more expertise. If you have a portfolio of investments yourself, I would ask that you talk to a human being at your institution and find out what they can do and what they have. Most of them have that now, just your specific professional may or may not be as schooled in what the institution offers. To give you some specific names you can look at, Calvert is a very large name in social responsible funds. They also have had a foundation for a number of years. That foundation, you can again lend money, just like the HomeWise example that I brought up before. There's another entity that's called RSF.
And can I just interrupt you?
Yeah.
If you buy a Calvert Foundation community note, you can get 4% on a 15-year note. Currently, 10-year treasuries are yielding 1.86. So that's a very good example of how you can invest and get a very compelling return, and your money is going directly into impact investments.
Thanks. No, thank you. So Calvert Notes is what that product is called. RSF, which stood for Rudolph Steiner Foundation, and now I think they just go by RSF. They're out of San Francisco. It's a similar model. They have a note, so you're borrowing money, you're lending money, and you're getting return. There's quite a number. So I mentioned this gobbledygook of jargon, CDFI. It actually stands for Community Development Financial Institution. HomeWise is one. So there's a national network. You can find them online. They'll refer you to others. I think any of us know some specifics that we're happy to share, but I think it's just in the interest of, don't want to specifically promote a financial instrument, so I think talk to people individually would be what I'd recommend. But
When
certainly,
we started impact investing, before we got into the direct investments, those were the easily understandable investments that we made. HomeWise, Loan Fund, Axion, the notes are there, it's an easy entry as an impact investor to get into.
thank you. Excellent. More questions? Yeah, please, here and then there.
I'm a student, and so my view may be a little naive, but I guess I just wanted to talk about the idea that Mr. Cantor brought up about responsible investing, kind of environmentally sustainable investing versus conventional investing, and the fact that Exxon was replaced in the S&P's top 10 companies, to me that signifies a change that the fact that Visa and companies like Procter and Gamble are starting to become more profitable. I don't know what their methods of earning huge profits are, but I guess I just wanted to bring that up.
It's an awesome question. Thank you.
It's not necessarily just within a 15-year span. To me, that seems like a much bigger improvement.
But I think it's interesting, just in terms of history, to look at which corporations have been the largest, most powerful corporations over time. Before Exxon, it was U.S. Steel, which was the biggest one, and it's nowhere to be seen in the ranks of the largest corporations now. Then it was Exxon. Now it's Apple Computer. As our society changes and it kind of tracks the process of our industrial society. So we move from building things and steel to powering everything with with oil to now an information-based economy. So you're gonna see those kinds of changes, and I'm sure something new will come up in the future as the biggest corporations. Maybe it'll be nanotechnology. But I'm not so sure if that's about a greening of corporate America so much as it is about this kind of evolution of the economy.
I recently read an article, I think Forbes actually did a survey of top, 100 companies around their view of should businesses embrace social good as part of their value, and a very large, I think majority of the, more than half of the CEOs actually said yes, absolutely. And you probably all know this, like a lot of the younger generation don't have a positive view of capitalism, right? Which can be quite concerning. So I don't think this is a new idea. I think you're there in terms of demanding more of the market economy, that you want it to be a socially good market economy. I think, I learned in business school, maximizing shareholder value was the part. I actually, the asset-light strategy of Exxon was studied and featured, and we all saw it as the creative strategy. I think those days are very over, and I'm more hopeful. I don't know if I'm that generation or past it, but I am hopeful that, in 20 years, the capitalism will be very different. Because it came from the left earlier, talked about the importance of storytelling, like who owns the narrative and who's telling the story. I think matters so much. In that, there's a lot of I read about this brilliant system theory that there are trailblazers and then there are the protectors who are successful in the current system, who protects those trailblazers so that they are successful and help build a track record of success. And then there are the storytellers who kind of spotlight that success and help bring it to the mainstream. And then there's like the people who make it easy for the conventional old system that are dying, hopefully, to make it easy for them to embrace this new movement. We all play some role in one place or another, and I think recognizing that we have a role as a philanthropy, but I think there's a huge, huge role in businesses to own that and tell their story of why this matters and why that's the future of where we're going.
Yeah, I do think that transition is happening. I started working on Wall Street in the early 80s, and I remember reading my first year in New York, the graduating class from NYU Business School held up their credit cards at their graduation. That was the period when the movie Wall Street came out, and greed is good was the maxim that was embraced all over the financial world. And it was the concept that self-interest is going to ultimately benefit society. It's going to drive efficiencies and corporate profits and take care of yourself first, and good things will follow. I think we're now 40 years later almost. The wealth gap is the widest it's ever been. We're facing the 6th major extinction. We're on the verge of a global catastrophe, and it's partly the result of that kind of thinking. And I think what we are finding is that of necessity, the way of thinking about what is going to be beneficial has shifted from self-interest to common interest. And we need to embrace that to survive.
Excellent. And then to BCorp-ize it, there's also some great companies that are in the public markets now. Danone is probably the largest, Etsy, and then there's also a lot of very significant companies that have B Corp certification that are not public, but where we can choose to, if not invest, at least make our purchases. So the Patagonias of the world, Ben & Jerry's, for example, which is now owned by a private company, public company, Warby Parker and others. And so, this isn't some kind of fringe thing. There are mainstream opportunities. And if each of us looks at how we use our own money, even if we feel it might be smaller than other pools, and place it towards things we care about, then you can make a difference. So thank you for that question. And a hand over here. Okay, that was all one.
I
Okay.
think she's just.
I was
Okay,
applauding,
everybody.
something beautiful, and nobody applauded, so.
Cool. Thank you. Good, more audience questions? Okay, we had one other for us to talk, and this was the idea of collective betterment. So, New Mexico, I think I'm tired of seeing us say, thank goodness for Mississippi statistically, right? Even though with DC, there's actually 51 rankings, if you want to add Puerto Rico and Guam, we can be 48 out of 54. So how do we collaborate for economic betterment, using triple bottom line business and also the things that you're doing as B Corp and as social responsible efforts? So, yeah.
Well, we do a lot of collaborations, and I think the key to making it successful is it has to be part of your core strategy. If you're collaborating around something that's not important as a core success of your work, then it doesn't have steam to make it all the way. Because and you have to have the long view of putting the right talent behind, putting the right resources behind, taking the time to think about what does it take to align your work with the rest of what's going on in the partnerships. So for that kind of thing to work, right, philanthropy has a role, but we don't have a business role, right? Businesses see social good as a feel-good work or keeping some of the customers happy. I think we have a lot of governments here. If government has an economic development goal and their community engagement or their social good is keeping some stakeholders happy, that's not gonna work, right? Yeah, we'll all do some incremental work, but that's not gonna drive real change. So, I think it takes real leadership, Are the CEOs and government secretaries and governor really committing to this? And is there a real alignment to build it into the priorities of governor's economic development strategy, right? She's got 5 or 6 different strategies. Is there something intentional about building social good to those strategies? Or is it, I've seen a lot of government grants and tax incentives that are about jobs, right? Or a specific, geography, like the opportunity zones. That can have a lot of negative costs, unintended consequences. If you're not really paying attention to, what does that job mean? Where is it coming from? With a real eye to the social good. So, I don't know what I'm saying, but I think it's just checking the box and saying, we're gonna do some social good. That's not gonna really drive change, and a lot of the trailblazers or people who are trying to do, it sets up for burnout. I think we need a real commitment from the leadership as part of their core work that gets investors demanding accountability, the citizens demanding results about the good that they are committing to, and not make it, here's one thing that we did and can have that without really showing what's behind it.
Did you something want to add? Collective action or economic betterment?
I guess maybe just throw a challenge to all the students in the room, is just to say, it seems like every week someone comes up with a new and clever and innovative idea. The B Corp thing is phenomenal, and we promote it as much as we can. I also want to just encourage all of you who are students to be thinking about what are those economic models going to look like in the future. And I hear so many great ideas coming out, and I'm just really excited about what that might look like, because I don't think we have all the toolkit yet to do some of this work. Part of the problem that I run into is, we regularly have had conversations just recently with very high net worth clients who are looking to invest significant amounts of money, and they want to get a return on their investments, but they also want to do social good. So to distinguish between impact investing, which is a little clearly, and ESG or socially responsible investing. So as socially responsible investors, we still have to meet our fiduciary duty and look at return is still a key consideration. Impact investing tends to put the social good first and profit motive second, if at all. And it's how do we find these hybrids? How do we find a way to bring these two business models together? And there's really a lack of tools. And I can go into the technical side of that a little bit. But if any students wanted to pick my brain and wanted to collaborate on that, I think there's some opportunities here in New Mexico and here at the School of Business to explore those ideas. But those opportunities are out there, and there's lots of money looking for ways to make a difference. We should need better toolkits.
I also, Judy, you mentioned leadership, and I think there's a gaping absence of leadership from above at the moment in this country. And in the absence of a government that is going to take responsibility for the future of our planet and of humanity, I think it's incumbent on individuals to step up and business owners to step up. And for me, actually the reason we decided to become a B Corp was because we were thinking, it's great to be socially responsible investors, but we need to be doing more. And B corporations are a grassroots movement. And it is leadership that's coming up from below. And initially with smaller corporations, now bigger corporations, like the ones that you mentioned. But these kinds of hybrid organizations that exist for profit, but also with considerations of other constituents than their shareholders, I think may be one of the vehicles in the future that can be effective.
Yeah, and I would just add one thing on that hybrid model, because I think that touches on my dog side too. I actually think it's not that there's no leadership, because we have a lot of like mayors and even the governors who are saying we want economic development, and they also care about a lot of the social needs, right? They're committing a lot of resources and things, but it's a separate thing, and it's replicated. Like they don't see that economic development strategy can actually be about addressing the social needs if you were intentional about creating, like inclusive economy. So build it into your economic development department strategy to think about how do you address poverty, how does this tax incentives and all the resources they're putting behind business development to actually benefit the communities or other social goods that they want to pursue. So I think it's the hybrid mentality that our leadership needs to have, and then ability to bring philanthropy, the business sector, the investors together to think about, how do you stack the capital, how do you bring different resources together to come up with a better aligned strategy, and don't make philanthropy be the business, or don't demand business to be a philanthropy. There's a better way if we kind of had a better network together and we're collaborating on the vision.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I was gonna answer, but let's get out some of our public officials.
Yes. Okay.
Do you wanna answer that, Alexandra? Go ahead.
Go ahead, no, you're
first. So for those in the room who don't know me, I'm from the city of Santa Fe. My name is Alexandra Ladd, and I'm representing the Office of Economic Development today, but most of the time I represent the Office of Affordable Housing. And so part of this conversation that gets me excited, the hybrid approach, well, there's also the government investment in these social service, socially conscious, environmentally progressive efforts in our community. And what's interesting, I think, the government, we do a bad job of storytelling. So what I'm constantly sort of working with my city councilors is, no, we're not just giving them money, they are doing work in the community, and I think a lot of, and we're trying to shift our conversation about the city is, through contracts, is making investments. And because, I'll take YouthWorks for an example, the city made an investment in the development of their culinary program as part of a much bigger effort. I'm sure the Community Foundation has probably put money into that same program, but that's what we're missing. We're missing that network, that tool to bring the power of the government investment in line with what philanthropy is doing, in line with what the private sector is doing.
Absolutely, and I just want to recognize how amazing City of Santa Fe government has been in engaging philanthropy in a lot of their kind of efforts area too. And I do think the public agencies are seeing that more and more, and we are very incentivized to reach out as well.
And I just wanted to your point, mention that there are institutional funds which invest in public housing, where you as an investor can put money into the funds and expect a return as you would from any bond fund. But if you put in enough money, and as a city government, you're in a position to perhaps do that, you can actually ask the fund to direct their investments to the area that you're concerned with. So you could invest in this fund and say, I want this money to go to housing in New Mexico. And if you're interested, I'll tell you more about it later.
Well, it's exactly that at the state level. Judy mentioned that it's the hybrid space that is so exciting. And government, particularly at the state level, seems to be just entirely structured to prohibit that kind of hybrid space and that kind of intercommunication. So how do we do that? And you talked about so many exciting ideas today. I'm really thrilled about how commerce and economic development can articulate and talk about how we are being responsible with taxpayer money, not giving money away, but in investing it for the good. And part of that is the metrics that were mentioned earlier this morning about how do we measure non-financial good. Because as government, we're responsible for taxpayer money. We have to measure that good and claim that good and directly work to support it. So I have to learn how to articulate it better so that we can sell it, so to speak, to the taxpayer, and the taxpayer can demand it of us as government representatives. It is our job. It is our job to work towards solving these societal problems. But hand in hand with business, we could do so much more.
Excellent, thank you. Anyone else in the audience want to contribute to this conversation? Because I think it's great. It's what we want. We want more of a conversation and not a talking head mechanism. Thank you for taking the courage to share that. And I think you have a billion participants here to support you.
If I could just
Yeah.
speak to the role,
Yeah.
I think a lot of the problem of organizations, investors seeing business and socially responsible behaviors as mutually exclusive, a lot of that falls on business schools. I think we've done a really bad job of talking about capitalism in a very old model. And so I think part of what we want to do that we've at least committed to here, and I think we're well suited to do it, but I think we're seeing it at other schools too, is thinking about we need to change the way we define capitalism. We need to change the way that we think about how we do business. And this model of investing, this way of thinking needs to be the new way that we do business, rather than falling back on only building stockholder value, falling back on the idea that greed is good. I think this is something that hopefully will also be supported by the education of our new business leaders. And so I think that's one of the things we really hope to be engaged with as well and help make your jobs easier. We hope.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. I think it's great. I've been really blown away with this group. I call it the six, the professors that I've just met through Anderson who are doing this BCorp-related effort, and it's really to their credit. We also have the business plan competition through UNM and also through the other public schools, which is another way that all of you can support kind of growing this effort collectively, and also if you know people who have nascent business ideas, it's a place for them to get both money and support. I'm going to give all the panelists kind of 30 seconds of final holy pulpit fame here so that we can end on time. I want to thank all of you for choosing this, and let's get some conversation to the people who had questions for each other, make sure that those happen. For myself, Drew, personally, and then also with Upspring, I think the things that I share is that it can happen here, that New Mexico, we don't need the oh, woe is us. Right, I think Neon Wolf is a shining example, and we don't want it to be the New Mexico story. We want it to be today's New Mexico story for us to have the next one tomorrow. We have some wonderful companies here. We have I think we've doubled our BCorp population thanks to some people in the room this year, so thank you for that. I want to encourage all of you to do this, and I'm happy to help you in whatever goals you're trying to have, so happy to chat and get you contact information. And then the one shameless plug I give is that I'm also working with a company called Electric Playhouse. They're speaking this afternoon. They're here in Albuquerque. And they are a new B Corp and they're looking to do amazing things through family entertainment, getting you away from your phone device and into collective play. So we look forward to sharing with you more about that.
I'm gonna steal one of Doug's taglines. I know he has another one which is investing for the future while destroying the future makes no sense.
My other tagline is, sorry, I don't have a tagline. Money without compassion is abusive, but compassion empowered by money can change the world.
I don't know how to follow that. It sounds really tacky, but I guess you can be the change that you want to see in the world. I mean, it's a famous quote, but I think that's very true in all of what we are trying to do here. And be there with like-minded individuals, form a network, and hold each other accountable, and have the long-term view. I like your name. Have the long-term view, because this is not going to happen in a short term.
So thanks to all of you for spending time on this, and we look forward to